All right, Big Bang. Today is Tuesday. It is July 20th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Here with Chief Tinfeld Tuesday. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for this one.
Are you?
Yeah. Anytime you can sprinkle in like Mad Men era, the Kennedys, Conspiracies, that's what gets my juices flowing.
Yeah, and I feel like these, like the Jordan gambling, the Cobain.
Yeah.
What else have we done to this? Avril Lavigne.
Yeah.
Like
The
you
pop
get the pop
culture
culture side
Yep.
involved. It's always interesting. So
Yeah.
so
Now you get the best of both worlds. You get the government, the mafia, pop culture. It's all fucking intertwined with Marilyn Monroe's death.
Yeah, so there you go. We're going to be talking about Marilyn Monroe's death today. Before we get into it, though, I do want to talk about Roman, Chief.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you can think about Marilyn Monroe if you use a Roman swipe and not have to worry about blowing your load.
Correct. Yeah, you definitely didn't want to think about her before.
No chance.
No.
No.
She's like, I mean, she's like the one with the dress flowing up, like that's her, right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right.
I would say in terms of people just known for being a sex symbol, she's probably the number one ranked still all time. Like there's obviously women more beautiful than her, but in terms of like being synonymous with being a sex symbol, I think she is still number one.
I think, yeah, I would have a hard time.
You can at least make
arguing
an
that.
argument for
Definitely,
it. Yeah.
definitely. So, whether thinking about baseball, whatever it's been, you don't got to do that anymore with these Roman swipes. They're clinically proven way. Excuse me, to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, and they're fast acting, but they don't require a prescription. Roman can chip swipe to you in discreet, unmarked packaging, and each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. They're super easy to use. Just take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it on, let it dry, and you're good to go. That's it. To get your hands on them, all you got to do is go to GetRoman.com/walk. You can get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/walk. Go get your swipes, people. Go get your swipes.
Yep. Bet you the Kennedys wish they had some swipes.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So
Yep.
where do we begin?
You know, I think if you're going to tell the story, because the official record of her death is a suicide. And, she was seeing a psychiatrist at the time, and she had really been seeing therapists and psychiatrists her entire life because, and I never knew this, I don't know if this is common knowledge, she had a really fucked up childhood. So her mother was this woman, her last name of Baker, and she kind of married young, ended up connected to this guy and had 2 children with him. But he was so like abusive, like physically, mentally, everything on her mother that she filed for divorce in California and won. The father, that guy, the original guy, which is not Marilyn Monroe's father, it was just her mother's first husband. He took her mother's other children, so Marilyn Monroe's half siblings, kidnapped them and went back to his home state of Kentucky. And Marilyn Monroe never found out she had siblings until she was like 12, and she didn't meet her sister or any of her siblings until she was an adult.
Oh, damn.
So like right away, it's like, okay, that's crazy. So the mother, and she never knew her real father. So the mother was, Marilyn Monroe was born under the name Norma Jean Mortensen or Norma Jean Baker. So her mother's maiden last name was Baker. And like I said, the father was never known. The mom, single mother, California. This is in, the 1920s. Didn't have any like means to really raise her daughter, Marilyn. And so she was like in and out of foster homes, but the mother would always visit on the weekends while she was working. She finally saves up enough money in 1934. So Marilyn's 7-8 years old now, something like that, to get a little house in like West Hollywood. They move in together. Within a year, Marilyn's mother is diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic.
Oh, shit.
And at that point, Marilyn Monroe becomes a ward of the state. So she's like going to she's living in orphanages sometimes. She's bouncing in and out of foster homes. And she's, it's been reported many places that she started being sexually abused when she was like 10. So she's this little girl whose mother is in an insane asylum. She never even knew the identity of her father. And the people that are supposed to be taking care of her are abusing her. So she like when it's like textbook things you read about, like the worst way for a girl to grow up. Like she had all of them, you know, poor, abused, parentless, you know, in and out, and then to the point to escape like this cycle of abuse and being in foster homes and stuff. She got married at 16. So she married this guy. I believe he was a little bit older, like 9 years older. And she basically she went to work as like, she was going to be a housewife. He was a merchant marines based in California. And then when World War II started, he got shipped off to the Pacific. And she actually started working as like, you know, you've seen those like those ads, those cartoons, like a Rosie the Riveter, you know, where you have the women. You've never heard of Rosie the Riveter?
No.
Ed.
No.
Ed Rosie the Riveter. It's it's basically like a catch-all for.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, so I've seen the pictures. I didn't know that was her name.
Oh, yeah. Like the women's hockey team that.
Everyone's seen the picture.
Of course. Okay. So that's referred to as Rosie the Riveter. And there's like the women's hockey team named the Riveters because it's like.
I knew that.
Yep. And that's where it comes from. Mm-hmm. So the Riveters. So she was like a Rosie the Riveter type. And this photographer from the Army, and she was making like propeller blades or munitions or something like that in some factory in California. And they had an Army photographer there to like basically like hype people up, like take pictures and hype people up. And, you know, for the war effort, because, hey, we need more women working. We want to, you know, be proud of these women. And she was there. And if you see the picture that he took that kind of started on her path, unrecognizable. She's got like auburn hair, you know, like, you know, you can tell she's a young, you know, early 20 something, but just like you would not be like, that's Marilyn Monroe. You would not be able to tell on a side by side that that's who she was. Like kind of curly brown hair, auburn hair, whatever you want to call it, chestnut. And from that picture that guy posted, her modeling career kind of like blows up. Like she's like becomes more and more famous. She's on the cover. She starts modeling as, you know, back they had that phrase called a pinup girl, right? So she was modeling as a pinup girl. She'd be on the cover of like 34 different magazines. Like she was becoming famous and like obviously quit that job. Her husband comes home from the war and he's like, you're a what? Like guys are jerking off to you. Like, you know, like he was just very uncomfortable with her career that they got divorced. So she gets divorced from that first husband. I think he divorced her. And then she had started on this like modeling, acting career. And that's when she, you know, she was married to like Joe DiMaggio. But the whole time, like while she was married to Joe DiMaggio for a while, actually. I want to pull up the exact dates.
54 to 55, it only says.
Oh, I thought it was longer than that. Yeah, okay. So I guess it was just a year. So James Doherty was the first husband. She was married to DiMaggio for a while, and he was kind of famous for actually like over the years where he would always go and like drop a bouquet of roses off at her grave and things like that. So she had an effect on him, but they're married, I guess, just for the year. That guy, Arthur Miller, was her third husband. They were married from 56 to 61, and he was like a kind of a big shot in Hollywood. He was a writer, a screenplay guy. He had written a couple books, and he was placing her and helping her career. And then, you know, 61, they get divorced. 62, she's dead. And all throughout this time, you know, her mother was in the psych ward, but she had actually gone to a psych ward too. And so she had been taught, she like left her in a padded room. She has all these horror stories about how she was at the psych ward. I think it was in Van Nuys, California, how they like mistreated her, and they would force her to strip naked all the time and bathe, and they would watch her bathe, and they would lock her in a padded room. And then she eventually was like, if you guys don't let me out of here, like she's like, they ask her like, hey, are you liking your stay here? She's like, no, you'd have to be a crazy person. But if you guys don't let me out of here, I'm going to like kill myself. So they eventually like just let her out, and she kind of is continuing her career as an actress, but she's so like depressed and drugged out and on you know, drunk all the time that she gets fired off of jobs. She actually got sued by like one movie production company for not showing up. She got fired off a movie with Dean Martin. Dean Martin was like, I'm not doing the movie unless she's in it. So then they had to bring her back in after they fired her. So she had like a very tumultuous career, and a lot of that was based on substance abuse, and she was on barbiturates and antidepressants, and then that's actually how they found her, was face down on a bed, pill bottles empty throughout the room, and like holding the phone receiver, and that's kind of where, you know, there weren't any real conspiracies about her death. Everyone's just like, oh, like she was troubled. This is a suicide.
She's threatened suicide.
She's
before.
threatened. She's faked. She's done that. Exactly. She's done that before. Like this is, you know, hate to say it, but it, like all the telltale signs. And there weren't really any conspiracy theories until this guy, I think his name was Capella, wrote a book kind of implicating the Kennedys. And not just one Kennedy, JFK and Robert Kennedy. So real brothers, also sounds like Eskimo brothers, that they had both had affairs with, which I had never known. I don't know if you knew that. I have like a weird obsession with the Kennedys. And when you watch these like documentaries, especially ones that are maybe like in favor of them or sanctioned or paid for by the Kennedys, they're always like, yeah, Jack, you know, JFK, he's a philandering guy. Like, he's a good-looking guy. He's a president. He's famous. War hero, all this stuff. Girls always loved him. His dad was kind of a, you know, guy like that too. And his older brother died. Joe Jr. died in World War II, but I don't think he ever married, but he was known as like a womanizer. And Robert was supposedly like his mother's son. So you had the first two boys. The dad was like, hey, like, don't worry about, have all the affairs you want. Like, have a wife, you know, have a family, be there for your family, but do whatever you want. Like, the dad was like a known scumbag. Okay. And JFK had like many affairs in the White House, out of the White House, before the White House. Like, he was just that kind of a guy. But they're always like, oh, that Robert Kennedy was such a good boy. He was such a good boy. And he was Rose's son. And, you know, he's married to Ethel Kennedy was his wife, I'm pretty sure. It's either Ethel or Eunice, but I'm going off memory right now. But they had 11 kids together. Robert Kennedy had 11 children with his wife.
That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of fucking kids. And supposedly, he maybe got a little bit bored, maybe got enamored with Marilyn Monroe, but he is implicated in a lot of these different conspiracy theories about her death.
Really?
Yeah. So this is like the number one conspiracy theory is that just like the Kennedys did it, right? Like they're just behind the whole thing. So I think everybody, like, she's famous for like that, like the air vent picture where the blows her dress up, the white dress, she holds it down. And that's like the picture you always see. The other thing that she's probably second most famous for is singing, you know, Happy Birthday. She comes out of the fucking cake or whatever it is, and sings Happy Birthday, Mr. President. And that was May 19th, 1962. So 2.5 months later, I think she died early August. You know, she's dead. So like from that moment, 2.5 months later, she's dead. So the theories are that she had already slept with JFK before the birthday cake thing. And then supposedly at the time, like that, there's no one really knows exactly, but there's like reports that they had hooked up, slept together at least once, JFK. And then, you know, he's like a married guy and he's not looking to be like in any sort of relationship. But then you see other things where Marilyn would say to people, like, yeah, JFK is going to marry me someday. So she, you know, there's reports on you know, on either end, like after he's done with being a president, he'll be able to get a divorce from Jackie and he'll marry me. So that's what she had told people, supposedly. But then there's other reports saying that they were only together once. And then there was also reports that, you know, Robert Kennedy was the attorney general at the time. And basically it was like JFK essentially was like, hey, like, this girl's crazy. Like, you have to deal with this, okay? And he kind of got, you know, enamored, allegedly, and started having his own affair with Marilyn Monroe. Mm-hmm. And that was supposedly a little bit longer. And then there's reports in 2007, Australian filmmaker Philippe Mora discovered a partially redacted FBI document that suggests Robert Kennedy also has had this affair, and may have been complicit in a plot to induce her suicide. So he was actually in California at the time. So there are people that say, and he also had this brother-in-law named, he was like in the Rat Pack kind of, this guy named Peter Lawford. And so he was, I think he was through Ethel that Marilyn would call him and be like, hey, like, Robert's not answering my calls. I can't get in touch with him. And he's like, well, he's married and he's got fucking 11 kids. Like, he's not going to just be here at your beck and call. You got to just leave it alone. And she just couldn't handle that. Like she started, the story goes that she would keep like this little diary. They call it her little red book. And she would just take notes on all like the bedside things that JFK and Robert Kennedy were telling her. And she threatened to go public with the affairs and then like the national security things that she had been like jotting down, like plots to kill Castro, plots to invade Cuba, this about the Soviets, that about the Soviets. And they're like, well, we just can't have that. So she called her, she had an appointment with her psychiatrist the day before she died. So they found her like overnight, basically at 3 a.m. So that earlier that day, they normally would meet for 1 hour. They met for 3. And then she supposedly called her psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist went to the housekeeper, be like, hey, like something's up with her, like keep an eye on her. So you could supposedly like the housekeeper could hear her arguing on the phone with somebody, and there's speculation that it was Robert Kennedy or maybe it was this Peter Lawford. And then there's also reports that Robert Kennedy visited her house after the psychiatrist that day. So that there was just, there's just been fights going on, and then she's like threatening all this, and then the theory goes that they had her killed and they made it look like a suicide when like the initial coroner said something about like having she was killed by injection, and then they had another person be like, no, like it was definitely pills, and then supposedly they gave her an overdose of these barbiturates, like after she was already dead, like rectally, to make it seem like, oh yeah, she overdosed. But there's like, could they have impacted the coroner report? They're the fucking Kennedys, probably. So you had the FBI was potentially involved. You also had plots with so the Kennedys, the FBI, her brother-in-law, and then there's another one that the Mafia just did this. So there's another angle. Have you ever seen The Godfather?
Yep.
Okay, so the opening scene where like, hey, like we need you to put this guy in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you need to get out of this contract. Your initial story was, hey, this is my godfather. I need you to let him out of his contract. This is the band leader, and he's like, well, you made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Well, it sounds like Marilyn kind of got in the same way. Okay, that she got hooked up with Sam Giancana. If you know that name. So he's a guy also very tightly linked to the Kennedys. So that they would, because they got her that contract, they would then use her to kind of seduce, sleep with, and then blackmail people that were doing them wrong. Okay. So like she was always in debt to them, and so it could be different movie producers. It could be the Kennedys themselves. So the Kennedys use the Mafia, and this is like, it's out there, to basically help steal the election, specifically in Illinois. That they had all, in Cook County, they had every corpse, everybody voting, and to sway that was like the big, back then. Now we think, Illinois is so deeply blue, you just mark it off as Democrat before the night even starts. Back then it was like 50-50. It was a very hotly contested state. And they stole it, okay? And there was this old clip from this guy, Pat Buchanan. You ever heard that name?
Yeah.
So he was Republican. He worked for Nixon. He actually won the New Hampshire primary, ran for president. I want to say it was like for like the 96 election, something like that, 96 or 2000, something like that. And so he's been in politics forever. And he was on like this political talk show talking about how we knew that they were stealing Illinois. We knew it in real time. And the host of the show stops and be like, why didn't you say something if you knew that they were stealing? He's like, because we were stealing Kentucky. So it was like, if we stole Kentucky, they would call it. If we called them out, we call it out. So everybody's cheating. It's like they cheated better than us, and they get the election. So it's just, I always like that anecdote.
Before we kick off, though, obviously we want to talk about Roman, though. Most guys try different ways to let a song in bed. Thinking about baseball, saying the Pledge of Allegiance in your head, counting backwards from 10, that shit doesn't work.
Does not work. Do you think JFK, do you think he would get off by saying the Pledge of Allegiance in bed? And like, I'm the fucking president. I'm gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's a good question.
Doesn't matter. Now he can just Roman swipe it up. He can sing the whole Star Spangled Banner if he wants to.
Yeah, exactly. People probably do the Star Spangled Banner. You don't need to do that no more.
Nope. Be in the moment.
Yeah. Francis Scott Key at home. You got the fucking swipe. You got
the clinically tested.
Yeah, exactly. Roman swipes, like you said, they're clinically proven way to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, and fast acting, but they don't require a prescription. They can ship the swipes to you in discreet, unmarked packaging, and each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. They're super easy to use. Just take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it on, let it dry, and you're good to go. That's it. To get your hands on them, all you got to do is go to GetRoman.com/walk. You can get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/walk. Go get them, people. You want to enhance your sex game. There's no reason not to. Put on a good performance. Be a showman. Do the right thing. Get some Roman.
What are they calling it? It's Hot Girl Summer.
Yeah.
Which is, and Hot Guy Summer, and it's the summer after the pandemic. Everyone's running around being a hoe. Be a memorable hoe. Get this Roman swipes. Go to work.
There you go. All right, let's hop into part 2.
Now Marilyn has slept with both brothers, and the Mafia hated the Kennedys. And this always goes back to the JFK assassination. The Mafia fucking hated the Kennedys because the Mafia helped the Kennedys get into power, and they were thinking that after Kennedys got elected, they would do a couple of different things. One, leave them the fuck alone, right? That was like, hey, like, we're going to get you in. You let us do our business. Two, we lost a shit ton of money when Cuba fell to communism. That's another Godfather 2 thing where they're building all these unbelievable casinos right off the coast, 90 miles from Miami and Havana. And they put a lot of money into those hotels down there. And it's just gone once Castro. So they're going to, hey, you guys remove Castro. We're going to go business as usual back in Cuba, make a shit ton of money. And Kennedys didn't do that. They didn't support the Bay of Pigs, which, mutual interest with the CIA, the government, whatever. Kennedy didn't help it. The Mafia was pissed about that. And then Robert Kennedy, as Attorney General, he went after the Mafia as hard as any Attorney General in history. So he not only did he not just leave them alone, he was worse on them than anybody. So there was a theory that, like, hey, Marilyn, we're going to introduce you to the Kennedys. You do what you do, and then we'll blackmail them. Okay? So that could be another reason why the Kennedys were like, well, we have to whack this girl out. We have to get rid of this girl because she's going to spill her guts, and the Mafia's got us while she's still alive. We got to get rid of her. There's also a theory that the Mafia had connections, and they had like some of their top guys. This guy, Johnny Rosselli, was one of Giancana's top henchmen, and he had a relationship with her too. And he had been like telling her like all where the Mafia bodies were buried. And, there's Jimmy Hoffa's name is thrown around. It's like any type of like major conspiracy from that era, it seems like she's got a connection to all of them. So elections being stolen, Cuba secrets, Kennedys, Jimmy Hoffa, the Mafia. She's just, Marilyn Monroe is at the fucking center of it. It's fucking crazy. And so she was, supposedly there was this book that came out, I want to say it was in the 80s, called Marilyn at Rainbow's End, Sex, Lies, Murder, and the Great Cover-Up. And that she was threatening the Mafia, being like, I'm done with you guys. If you threaten me again, I'm going to tell everybody all of your secrets. So it's like Marilyn was just, supposedly playing in the deep end with bad guys, and thought that she could just say whatever she wanted and they would just leave her alone. That's just not the case. So you piss off the FBI and the Kennedys and the CIA, that's That's a problem. You threaten the mafia, that's a problem. So a lot of people wanted her dead, and she was such like a loose cannon that they're like, she might actually really do this shit. So there were a lot of people that had motivation and were scared of that she might actually follow through. Like, these weren't empty threats, and she's just such a loose cannon that you have to get rid of her. So those were like the two big conspiracy theories between how she would end up dead. It was that the Kennedys wanted her dead, and so did the mafia. And those are the wrong people to fuck with at that time.
I mean, it makes sense that she was involved with so many people.
Yeah.
Right? Not like she was the hot thing. Like,
she was the hot thing.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, not even just, like, not literally. She was just the hot thing.
Right.
You know, whether it be
Yeah.
Conor McGregor or Justin Bieber, she was the hot thing.
Yep.
So, like, everyone wants a piece of the action, right?
And I think back then, this is probably the golden era of the mafia when they were at their most powerful. It's like, and maybe I'm just naive to it now, but I don't think the mafia is like running Hollywood like they used to. I don't know about that, but they definitely were heavily involved back then, and with different unions, and so the fact that she was in Hollywood and she got in this particular way, got help from them, and there's released documents and some of her notes and testimony from some of her friends, like, yeah, she was sleeping with some people from the mafia and sleeping with the Kennedys. And it's just it's the reason that these conspiracy theories about her keep popping up is because there's a lot. It's like where there's smoke there's fire kind of thing. And the other thing that's when you read about these articles, because now it seems like they've been coming out again because like more books are being read, and in 2017 Trump said we're gonna release a lot of these documents about Kennedy. Finally, we're going to get to the bottom of this. So October 2017, they released the JFK files, thousands and thousands of these classified documents, and there was a letter from the FBI to Robert Kennedy that warned him that Marilyn was planning a book about all this stuff. And 300 pages of those documents that were released in 2017 that were promised, they were deemed too dangerous for national security. Okay, 2017, the Kennedy assassination, and this is all about the Kennedys and the Kennedy assassination mostly, and she's mentioned in there a few times. But what could be so dangerous 50, 60 something years later, really like about 60 years later, everybody that's involved in that thing is dead. What could be so dangerous that 60 years later if we can't tell it due to a concern about national security about the Kennedy assassination? What the fuck?
Holy shit.
Is that crazy?
It is crazy.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, all right. So like to put it in pop culture terms,
yep.
Like people think she got Christopher Moltisanti'd.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Sopranos, if
right.
you're familiar.
Yeah, right, exactly.
People think that, people thought he died in a car crash.
Yeah.
No.
Or
he did, kind of, but not really.
Or more even, I'm blanking on her name, Christopher's wife, fiance, Adriana, where she's killed by the mafia too, because it was like, well, we know you're talking, and your days are numbered, and they just they go to her, and maybe it was this guy, the brother-in-law of Robert Kennedy, Loeffler, who knew her, and because that was one of the reports of one of these coroners, who that report was quickly destroyed, was that he was like, she was poisoned via injection, probably by somebody she trusted. So it could have been her psychiatrist. Could the mafia or the Kennedys gotten her? Hey, you go in, say, you're having a bad day. We talked with you all day. Let's dose you up so you can get some nice sleep. Dead.
I mean, that's fucked.
Like could very well be, though.
Yeah, I know. It's just, number one, she was 36.
Yeah.
Young.
Yeah, very young. And if you never watched Mad Men, right?
No.
Okay, so there's a scene in Mad Men, I think it must have been season 2, where the news breaks, that Marilyn has overdosed. And like the whole office is just shut down. Like the secretaries, they're all secretaries working in the office at that point, crying. Like she was such an icon. I think it'd be like if, Beyonce turned up dead. Like it was like she was that level of star, where it's like her movies in those dollars back then grossed over her career, which is not that many movies, $200 million. So that, she was like a huge A-list celebrity, to the point that, she's singing happy birthday. She's sleeping with the president, singing him happy birthday. And, but dangerous wild card, definitely mentally unstable. And it was they're probably like, look, no one is even going to think twice because she has this history of being, nuts. And that was the end of it.
Yeah. And I mean, there is some, I guess, something to it where she could have done it, right? I mean,
for sure.
But
there was this other thing where the pills that she was taking, they only did a toxicology on her blood and her liver, and they didn't do anything else. So these pills that she took were yellow, like this, like almost like a what turmeric is? Turmeric. It's like a spice. It's like the spice. It's in Indian, whatever. It doesn't matter. But if you touch it, it's an anti-inflammatory. It just sticks to you forever. It's almost like bee pollen. You just can't get it off you. And this pill that she was taking was like that yellow color. And supposedly when you overdose on that, it like leaves like a lot of traces, like all through your stomach, like your whole like insides are just yellow. And she didn't have any of that, but that's what the empty pill bottle was. So it's one of those things where it's like, hey, like maybe, it almost seems like you read these different reports, it almost seems more likely that she was either like pushed to suicide or poisoned or something, and it made it look staged rather than it was just an accident.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes people, they say with their smoke there's fire. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people like force the fire.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, there's something to it. Another one we should do too is Brittany Murphy. And I don't know
enough about that one.
Neither do I.
Yeah, but people say that about her too.
It's a very strange circumstances around her death. I know that.
Okay.
She's great too.
Great.
Clueless
was great.
Mm-hmm. Was she just married with Ashton Kutcher?
Ashton Kutcher. That was the one I was thinking of. It's not a bad movie at all.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
And she was in 8 Mile.
8 Mile.
She was great in 8 Mile.
She was very good in 8 Mile.
But man, this is...
Gave you something to think about here.
Yeah, dude. There's just so many big players involved.
I know. And I'm trying to... It's crazy. There have been like movies about her, but not one that I've seen or can remember. Not one that I think has been done well. It almost seems like maybe it's time to go back, and maybe HBO does a miniseries.
Agreed, completely.
And everything, like you link all of it, Yeah,
I mean,
you could probably do 2-3 seasons about her. Or early childhood would be compelling enough because its early childhood is super fucked up, and then it makes sense that it would lead to all these types of decisions and running, being someone who is like easily preyed upon because they've been preyed upon their entire lives.
Yeah, I mean, she's insanely interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
That's for sure. Yeah, if you said 200 million.
Yeah.
Now I guess in 2020 it'd be equivalent to $2 billion.
Whew.
Her gross.
Damn.
So.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, not that you even needed. She's one of those people too. Like I never, because I don't really go into all those old movies.
Yeah.
I never really knew what she was in, but I just knew she was huge, and I always knew who she was.
Yeah.
You're right. The pictures are the ones that like really kind of bring to the forefront, and then the Kennedy rumors was always a big thing. Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Mm-hmm. Like I'm trying to think if I've seen any of her. I'm trying to pull up her IMDb right now, and I want to say, like, and then she I know that she had several movies towards the end, like Something's Gotta Give. Like they had to make that into a short because she was dead before it came out. Some Like It Hot. I think that's a very famous one. The Misfits was kind of an interesting thing too, that she just didn't want to do that one because her second husband, the guy Miller, is basically loosely based off of her life, and they would show her getting like kind of sexually assaulted or like harassed in that, and it made her really uncomfortable. And they had already been divorced when that movie was like released, so she was like, but she was contractually obligated. There was like thought that he intentionally like made it worse really? As like a punishment for her. And then the other movie that I've heard of is The 7-Year Itch, which I think that's just about having an affair too.
I feel like this one too is Niagara. I feel like that's I feel like
I
I've heard
haven't.
that one,
I haven't.
It was the highest grossing.
That one was.
It was one of 20th Century Fox's biggest box office hits that year.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, but regardless,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I saw this one. I was like, man, we should probably do this.
It's kind of crazy we haven't done it so
Yeah,
far. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
That
Thing about the maybe we should do it. I think we've done JFK before. We might want to do another one like that. The fact that in 2017 they're like, we just can't tell you. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you can't tell us? Everybody involved is dead. Everybody.
And I know you're so into them. And
yeah, I love the Kennedys.
We did Operation Northwoods before.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think we did the Cuban Missile Crisis maybe too.
I think so.
Yeah.
I know we did the other one. The girl who died in Connecticut.
Chappaquiddick.
Yeah.
That was Ted Kennedy.
Was it?
Yeah.
The one. No. The girl who died, and it was the two brothers. Who
yes.
in Greenwich.
They were like second cousins.
Yeah, it was
or
like
something.
Yeah,
yes.
It was always like, I don't know. You're just you're on the.
Well, we could probably, if we haven't done Chappaquiddick, which I don't know, my brain, I thought maybe we did, but that they made movies out of that where Ted Kennedy was like drunk driving allegedly, went down a dock, put his car in a river or a bay or something, and he had like a young intern with him. He swims to safety, leaves her in the car. She's found dead. He didn't report it until like the next day. He's like, I got a fucking problem. Guy like. And then they just kind of made it go away. Like he showed up and gave like this press conference wearing this like it was almost like the Portnoy. Remember when Portnoy did the combine where he had the neck brace on?
Yeah.
So like, and remember how ridiculous that looked?
Mm-hmm.
Ted Kennedy, who was a sitting senator of Massachusetts, the lion of the Senate as he was called later, fucking at least was manslaughtered this girl that he was having an affair with. And by drunk driving off a bridge, basically, and let her die, shows up and was like, "Oh, this is really terrible," wearing this like fake neck brace when he's really just fine. And then nothing really. He couldn't run. He couldn't win a presidential election against. I think he ran against Jimmy Carter for the nomination in '79, like up to the '80 election. So he couldn't win that. That was his punishment. No jail time. No real investigation. It was just like, yeah, that girl's dead. The Kennedys back then were like the most powerful people, and it's almost like, man, like karma.
What's left of the bloodline?
Well, Caroline Kennedy, which is JFK's daughter, she has a son. JFK Jr. is dead. I mean, the tragedy has not really stopped because, like I said, Robert Kennedy had 11 children. I don't think anybody is in politics now. One of the Kennedys, I think it might be Robert Kennedy Jr., was running for Congress or was running for Senate, and he didn't win. He's got some sort of illness, but now he's like a lawyer, and he's really kind of out there against some of like the big pharmaceutical companies and against vaccines and things like that. So that like he's probably the most public Kennedy left, but I don't think any of them are really involved in like government the way that they used to be a generation ago. But the bloodline is still there. I don't know how much of the money is left, but they've been around for a good 100-year run for them. Yeah,
I mean, and back to Marilyn, one more point. It's just if you were surrounded by them, if you had any mob ties, and it sounds like Kennedy to an extent too, and if he died, there was probably a little bit of suspicion towards everybody.
Yeah,
regardless of who you were.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if they did it more gruesomely or something, or
sending a message,
or a disappearance, then like the probably people would have looked into it more.
Right,
so.
Right, and I think and then there's also like the theory that she's not dead. Okay, that the whole thing was staged. That they had some body double, and she was just like, hey, like, here are your options. You can basically be in witness protection. We're going to tell everybody you're dead, or you're dead. Okay, so that's a theory that's out there too. So
take it for what it's worth, people.
Yep.
Look into it. I don't know what's alleged, but who knows?
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. That's today's Tinfoil Tuesday. We'll We'll be back next week with one of these. Obviously, we do it every week.
Yep.
Thanks, Chief. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.